Hi, and welcome to EnviroCentre's Green Room. Meet the people on the front lines of climate action and find out what keeps them up at night. I'm Mandy, and this week we're joined by artist Alex Stewart. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, how's it going?
Great. It's been nice chatting with you before the recording started.
Yeah.
So we'll get right into it.
Yep.
We ask all of our guests to bring one environmental fact to share. What have you brought with you today?
Well, like we talked about just before recording here, I did a bunch of research and tried to figure out like a fact that I could narrow down. And I kind of always knew this, but I wasn't sure like how in depth it was. And it's like a quarter of all of our medication is like derived from some form of tree. Um, yeah, so like aspirin is actually made from willow bark. Um, and there's like a couple of like chemotherapy medications that are derived from, so like there's one like called Taxol, which is derived from a yew tree. And that's just something that I found really interesting because I didn't know that that was like, I always knew that like plants and medicine went hand in hand, but I didn't know to the extent that it was or how mainstream a lot of them were.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I had no idea. I would not have known that if you didn't tell
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
good to
that
know.
was a new one for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, next question then, which is a bit more of a serious one, I guess. What
Yeah.
climate problem keeps you up at night?
All of them. But outside of that, currently it's I'm putting a lot of my focus and attention on the old growth logging here in BC. Um, because there's it's under 3% of old growth forests are left in BC here, which is quite sad, especially if like no one ever really gets to witness them or enjoy them or anything like that. And in doing my research for talking about this, it's depressing to know that the NDP promised to like end old growth logging, but they've actually increased logging by like 43% since they've been in power. So that's really depressing. And hopefully that changes soon. There's been a lot of media attention recently and stuff like that. So hopefully that um, helps sway what's been going on at least a little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really sad to hear.
Yeah.
It's something that I have not yet experienced. So I would like to, at some point, I
Yeah.
would like it to stay there. I mean, for many, many reasons, but I would
Yeah.
like to witness it at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And like there's some, yeah, it's sad when you think about how few like spots that are, thousands and thousands of years old, like trees that are thousands of years old are just being logged and destroyed, and it's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
depressing.
terrible.
Yeah.
That's really terrible. Okay, well, moving on to maybe a more positive outlook, but also keeping that in mind, of course, what is the solution?
I mean, sadly, the solutions are already in place. Like there is sustainable logging practices out there. There's a company called Wildwood that is like built their platform on ecoforestry, which is like a really sustainable. I am not the most educated person on this, obviously. There's a lot more I could learn, but they do. They're like a sustainable old growth logging forest is the best way that I can describe them. And everything's done and regrows quicker than everything else because the forest is healthy. They're more resistant to disease because it's not freshly planted things. It's all things that come from the old growth trees that are still standing. That are seeding around them, and like the options are there. It just needs to be handled in a way where greed is less at the forefront. Because I think that's the main reason is people want old growth trees because of how the wood looks, and just it's like I don't know. I think it's just something that we should have pivoted away from a long time ago, but it's people being stuck in their old ways and uh, not changing. There's like so many more sustainable options out there, especially for building and wood alternatives and everything like that. So
yeah, we talk a lot about that, how there needs to just be like a cultural shift away from the things that we used to do towards things that are, better for the planet, more sustainable.
Yeah, like there's building. So I do work for like because I'm a painter and I multifaceted on everything that I do. And one of the things that I've always done is figured out a way where I can do the work that is meaningful to me, but I also am a rational human being and need to sustain my life in some manner. So I pick up contract work, like doing my murals, and I do some finishing work for like a furniture company. But the company that I do the work for is really, really about using the most sustainable materials they can. So there's actually a new company out there that's making like wood alternatives out of rice husks, and they're giving it like an 80-year full refund warranty because they're that confident in their product. And yeah, like it's it it's baffling to me that with the technologies that we have and the alternatives that are out there, that we're still stuck on like the old ways, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, good to know that there are companies like that who are coming up with products like that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is in the way?
Legislation. Legislation and money, basically, I think are the two main things in the way there, sadly. And I don't have the answer for how to fix that outside of getting involved politically and trying to make your voices heard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I think those two things come up a lot in people's answers of what's in the way pretty uniformly across the board.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to environmental issues.
For sure. Yes. So how can people help then?
I mean, at this exact moment, I'm sure you're possibly familiar with Protect Our Winters or POW.
Mm-hmm.
So Protect Our Winters Canada has a really, really easy, you just give them your name, email address, and postal code, and they send emails on your part basically to all of our legislation here in BC to try and at least get, I mean, if you spam their inboxes enough, they're going to read them eventually. So, and apparently John Horgan is making an announcement today at some point, I think at 2 o'clock actually, about the logging here in BC. Because there's been nonviolent protests going on and like peaceful protests and everything going on the logging roads probably 2 months, 3 months now here to try and save the old growths. And they've recently got like a lot of media attention, and I think that's the main reason that they're finally listening. Yeah.
Well, those are great suggestions for how people can help.
Yeah.
So based on, your experience, what you're passionate about, what you do for a living, what do you think is the good future?
I mean, I would love seeing a pivot to finding more sustainable options in everything that we do. Like, especially that's one of the things that I talk a lot about when I'm talking to, like, I do guest lectures at universities, and I talk a lot about it because a lot of artists use like acrylic paints and everything like that. And acrylic paint is just plastic. Like it's, and most artists, I would be willing to bet that upwards of 85 to 90% of artists don't think about their paint when they wash it down the drain. And that's just washing chemicals down the drain. Like they just wash the brushes off in the sink and call it a day. Or just like dump their brush water into the sink and wash down the drain. Like there's no thought because we were never taught to think about that. And I would like to see a world where we pivot towards the more sustainable side of things and figure out ways to make products that don't rely on chemicals or plastics or anything like that. So like in my ideal world, that would be what we do, like get away from killing old growth forests and using oil to create literally everything that we use in our daily lives. And I mean, there is a shift. There are companies doing cool things, but I haven't seen a push in the art world to like get away from that. And that's a lot of what I've been doing. It's like with my work in the forest, like it's all handmade paints that I make, and it biodegrades and rots away within like a month. And that's how myself and David Poe got to meet and talk, because we're one of, or two of 3 artists that we can think of that work that way. So it's because, yeah, it's just, it's bizarre to me that there isn't more of a shift, especially in the art world, where we have all of these companies that are dedicated to using art to like raise awareness and raise money for the environment, but there's no thought about the products they're using to do that. And I would like to see some more organic options out there. There is one company called Sugar that uses sugarcane as the base for their paint rather than petroleum, which is really cool. But they're one company and they're not that big. So obviously I don't know everything, and there's probably more companies out there, but they're so small they don't have a footprint.
That's it for this week's Green Room. Thanks so much for joining us as we get to the heart of climate action. You can find out more about our work and sign up for our newsletter at EnviroCentre.ca. Follow us on your favorite podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.